Fantastic. My name is Clarissa Davis. I'm a student at the University of Oregon, working with these fine people and a couple other people on our team to create an evacuation plan for Lincoln County, for the entire county, as well as for specific priority areas. So we'll touch on that a little bit. This whole presentation is going to walk you through the project, but right now it would be really helpful for us and our team to hear who we have in the room. So, am I speaking too quietly?
No.
A little bit.
No, you're fine.
That's okay.
We just had a moment.
It's okay, I can try to speak up as well. I've been told I have a quiet voice sometimes. So if we could hand it over to all of you all for name and organization and position and what brought you here today. I'll go this way.
Okay. Well then, I'm Amanda Ferguson, and I am the Planning and Policy Lead for the Institute of Policy Research and Engagement. You're not going to remember that title. We call it IPRE, which is a research facility underneath the Planning Department at the University of Oregon. And these two students are part of my team that's focusing for Lincoln County on the Lincoln County Evacuation Plan. And our client is actually Lincoln County. Samantha Buckley, your emergency manager, is actually our client. And so she came to the university, actually, her predecessor came to the university and asked us to start this project. But we were really blessed to be able to work with Sam on this project. I have about 25 years of local government planning experience. I spent 20 years as the assistant emergency manager for Cottage Grove. So I have a lot of background in this area, and I wrote Lane County's evacuation plans last year. But, so we're really happy to be here. We spent 2.5 hours driving around the city, so I think we hit most of those this morning. Thank you all for being here.
So,
2.5 hours. So a lot of it, for sure, yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Elena Coleman. I'm a grad student in community and regional planning. I'll be graduating in June. So I'm the manager for this project, and there's 3 students who are working on it with me. I worked on the community wildfire protection plan last year in Lincoln County, so have worked in Lincoln County now for 2 years. And it's been really interesting starting on the wildfire side and then focusing more on evacuation. So I'm excited to have such a great crowd of folks here, and really we're here to hear from you. So I'll pass it off if you could just share your name. You know, maybe you're here as just an interested member of Depoe Bay. Please share that, or if you have an affiliation with an organization, and just maybe briefly what brought you here this afternoon.
Okay, I'm Kerry Smith. I'm the board treasurer of the Depoe Bay Homeowners Association on the Northeast Spring Avenue off of Collins up there. And I'm here because we're involved in planning for whatever events, the Cascade Subduction Zone event or wildfires, whatever's going on. We've been meeting with other homeowner associations to try to coordinate efforts, mass materials, educate our community. And that's why I'm here, to participate and see what we can learn and pass on to our homeowners. And this is my friend Enoch, who's also he can speak for himself.
I'm Enoch Addison, and I do live in Depoe Bay. I've been there about 7 years. Got introduced to the HOA, and I presently work on the evacuation committee for the Depoe Bay.
Okay.
And we want to be here and be able to move it forward as we feel that it's very important for this community.
Rick Beasley, Depoe Bay City Council. I want to thank you for coming here and putting this on. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Let's go all the way to the front and then we'll go to the back row.
Hi, I'm Depoe. I'm with these 2 gentlemen from View of the Bay. We have a repair committee up there, strictly about evac or tsunami or whatever the preparedness. And then I'm part of the City of Depoe Bay Emergency Preparedness Committee.
Fantastic.
I'm Karen Andraka. I live in Stonebridge, just above Harvard. I moved to Depoe Bay the very week the article in the New Yorker magazine came out, a really big one. It scared the daylights out of me. So that's what got me started being involved. We have an emergency supply cache in our neighborhood along with the fire district. I'm also on the emergency prep committee. I'm here to learn.
Thank you.
Great.
Paul Carver, I am the Depot Bay City Public Works Supervisor. Here to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Valerie Sommer, I'm on the city council.
Jack O'Brien, Depot Bay resident.
Autumn Watson, City Council.
Don Foote, Little Elk Cove resident.
Ann Bradley, Little Well Cove, and I'm chair of the safety committee, so we're very interested in hearing what Depot Bay is planning and want to be a part of that.
Great to hear.
Is the safety committee through Depoe, like the Depoe Bay Safety Committee?
I'm not sure what I said, what I meant to say was Little Well Cove, which is a
Oh,
small
gotcha.
community just a mile south of here.
Great, thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
thank you.
Hi, and I'm Chris Berry. I am a resident in Depoe Bay, and happy to serve with the Depoe Bay Safety Committee here, and also live in Whale Cove, and we have a great safety captain here. So, thank you.
Hello, Fran Beck, Antrim resident and city council member.
Fantastic. Jump over there.
Okay. Kim Holberg, city reporter, Depot Bay resident. I didn't know or think much about evacuation, emergency preparedness, living in Valley before coming to here, but it's very present here. That outage that we had was not an earthquake, it wasn't the big one, it wasn't tsunami, but it was kind of eye-opening. So really perfect timing because the city needs to update its plans.
I'm Brady Widener, Public Works Director for the City of Depot Bay.
Kathy Short, Mayor, City of Depoe Bay, and I'm just passionate about saving my neighbors' lives. I think it was brought home in 2020 when we had the wildfires and people were evacuating through our town and our highway was jammed. And it scared us all. And so we've got to make plans.
I'm Joe Cannon. I'm part of the Depoe Bay Green Resilience Task Force. So we can dial in green energy for backup power systems, so we don't have an outage problem again. And that's why I'm here to learn more about how we can better prepare.
I'm Scott Whitmire, I'm also part of the Depot Bay Green Energy Task Force Resilience. One of the goals for coming out of the outage was to make sure that we have resilient power sources, because this place was pretty dark.
I'm Joyce King, City Council, and Chair of the Emergency Preparedness Committee. We've got a really good, strong committee in my opinion. We're doing a lot of things with, working with Amir Short, a reporter, different people, trying to get as prepared as we can. It's a lot of work, but we're headed in the right direction. Thank you.
Last but not least, my name is Liz Martin, and I'm a local native. I was born and raised here, so I know all the roads around town and stuff, so I'm local knowledge.
And that
too. But I represent a school board in county school district or chair.
Thank you. Yeah, it's helpful to hear that we've got many safety preparedness committees and people from Depot Bay or Whale Cove, as well as some other homeowners associations.
I don't want to ask, do we have a full city council meeting here? This is, no, okay, good.
Okay.
It's not a meeting, it's a focus group and they're not 2 or 10 or something.
Well,
We're missing.
Yeah,
Just one.
Oh,
Doesn't matter more.
just Lindsay.
No, that's great.
It's not.
They're not, everybody's supposed to show up.
Nope. Sweet, so that gives me a little bit of background. We are going to jump into our presentation overview today. We have some meeting goals coming up, so kind of what we want to hear from you all, how we want your input to inform the plan. We're going to go into the project overview. There's a couple different components and not all of it relates to you, but it's good to know what else is going on, as well as the process and timeline of the plan, and then the specifics between a countywide plan and the priority area plan. So for you all, meeting goals today, we really want to hear your concerns regarding infrastructure and evacuation. So specific infrastructure that is either vulnerable or is an asset to the community, as well as infrastructure look and identify current resources and assets. So all of this information today will be used that is gathered today will be used to inform the Depot Bay Priority Area Plan. So when I'm talking about priority area plan, kind of funny words, that just means like the evacuation plan. The plan that is going to be written for Depoe Bay that will include, well, lots of things and we'll get into it. So for that first overview, like Amanda said, we are working with Samantha Buckley, the emergency manager for Lincoln County. She is our primary client. She has convened with us a steering committee of
Welcome back.
Perfect to see you all again.
We're troublemakers.
That's perfect. Yeah, so Samantha was to convene a steering committee of 23 stakeholders, key stakeholders all over the county, which Kim is a part of. So that team is going to be helping us look at the countywide plan. So we are going to be creating this countywide evacuation plan as well as 8 priority area plans, of which Depoe Bay is a part of. So the process and timeline, the main thing to take away from this slide is that it's going to be wrapping up in like the fall. So we've been working on the project, or the project's been getting worked on since last September, and it's going to take about a little more than a full calendar year, but a lot of the work is getting done right now, up and through June and through the summer. And so diving into the county-wide plan, this is one document for the county for mass evacuation. So it's going to include evacuation policies for the entire county, as well as different specific procedures and mitigation recommendations to make the county itself more resilient going forward. It specifically looks at notifications and it has a concept of operations. It has a case study of the Echo Mountain Fire. We were able to talk to some of the fire department who are working on that. And we're looking at talking to some of the people who experienced that evacuation from like a community perspective, as well as a look on vulnerable populations and a framework to identify vulnerable populations, as well as to assist and support vulnerable populations. And it will also include mitigation recommendations for the entire county to make the entire county more resilient in an evacuation.
So just to caveat on that mitigation recommendations, one of the things we have a board up or beside us as anything else is because we will be trying to capture some things that are really necessarily hazard mitigation projects that you may want to identify. And we'll be using that information later next year to help write Lincoln County's natural hazard mitigation plan. So that may not be part of the evacuation plan, but we're going to be capturing that information so that we can use it in the next project that we'll be working on with Sam that starts in August.
Perfect. So that was all the countywide plan. That was the entire county, very much more broad. Now we're going to transition and look at the priority area plan. So this is where Depoe Bay is very specifically coming in. We're going to have a lot of slides that are coming and they're all going to say priority area plan. That means that they're specific to what we're doing today and the project that we're doing today. So what is a priority area plan? First of all, it is evacuation routes that are specific to your community, so specific evacuation routes for Depoe Bay for all hazard types. And we will do a primary, secondary, and ideally tertiary routes. So you can change them or do different ones based on different hazards that have happened. It will also have maps and tables with community assets and resources, and next step for mitigation and creating more resilient Depoe Bay, which sounds like you all are working on a lot, so that's great to hear. So hopefully those will be useful. And at the end of the day, we really want this plan to be useful to you all. So later today, when we're going to do our discussions and our work, we're really wanting to hear from you what you need as a community. So the priority area timeline, just so you know who else is coming and who are getting these priority areas, we've got Newport, Siletz, and Depoe Bay that are happening right now, going through June. And then in the summer and fall, Lincoln City, Waldport, Seal Rock, Toledo, and Yachats will also be getting priority area plans. So this is the outline. This, if you can see this image right here, is the Cottage Grove Lake evacuation plan. That is for Lane County. It was done last year. That's an example of what your priority area plan would look like and kind of how it came to be. And then this is the outline of what will be included in the priority area plan. So a community profile, a risk profile, key considerations, route options and evacuation maps, shelter maps and shelter in place considerations, communication key concepts, and then next steps. For the community profile, we will include geographic information, a main overview and broad look, demographic and specific vulnerable populations to Depoe Bay, as well as current preparedness efforts. So I'd like to write about all your preparedness committees, which I'm excited for. The risk profile, this map here, this is a risk for wildfire for the entire county. We did not have time to pull it together and look very specifically at Depoe Bay. This is an example of the kind of map you'll see, but it's only going to be including Depoe Bay in it. So we'll have the risks for tsunami, flood, earthquake, landslide, and wildfire. So very specifically, which places are at risk for which hazards. As well, we're going to do an inventory of public assets. You might have heard we were driving around today for about 2.5 hours before this meeting, and we were looking at a lot of these things. So we have a lot of this kind of written out, but we want to ensure and validate what we have found today and also hear from you other things that are included. So public assets, public parks, telecommunication systems, public utilities, private assets, community preparedness, and road networks. Surprise, surprise, those are all written up on giant stickies in the back. So we'll get to that later. Next, we'll have our route options and evacuation maps. This is a sample from the Cottage Grove. This is not your map, this is not your city, but this is what your, or a sneak peek at what your map might look like. So you've got your primary, secondary, and tertiary routes here on this sample map, as well as specific considerations to avoid. We've been talking about your bridge here, but I'm gonna touch base with some of you all on that later, as well as different shelter options there as well. We have also added, this was not something they did on the Lane plan, but we've added a shelters and shelter in place map and section with shelter locations, specific shelter preparedness considerations, so how do you make a good shelter, what do you need, is that generators, fuel, those kind of things, as well as shelter in place considerations, because like we recently saw in January, evacuation is not always the option. Sometimes it's, okay, what specific vulnerable communities do we need to inform about evacuation considerations, and what does a shelter in place look like for the rest of the residents? As well as isolation preparedness. Perfect. And then we also have a communication and key to contacts section with the emergency response players, a reference guide for important context during an emergency event, with a caveat right here, this is not going to be public, just to everyone. That specifically will not be public knowledge. And then we're still in communication with Sam and Kim about which parts of these plans will be public. As well as communication hubs. This was something that came out of the steering committee, was a place, a physical location where residents can go to get, update, real life information about hazards. So if you don't have access to a phone or your power's out, where do you go? How do you get this kind of information? So this was something that came out of that committee and something that we wanted to bring to you all to see if you were interested in that kind of a situation. As well as specific community outreach ideas and options. So this is a very,
So let's stop and see any questions.
perfect. Do you have any questions? Yes, in the back.
Thank you. So once we have this plan written out, and I guess, you know, everybody in Lincoln County has it, does that make us eligible for grant funding for implementation or resources we might need? Is there any money that
That's a
comes
great
with this plan?
Yes, so that's the next plan. I started off by saying that one of the things that we're doing today, and through this process, is trying to capture all of the great ideas you guys might have for hazard mitigation. That information will be incorporated into the hazard mitigation plan. And I believe Depoe Bay is one of the annexes of Lincoln County's overall countywide plan. That we'll be working on that next year, with the goal that it will start later this summer and then probably get finished by next spring.
But the community wildfire protection plan, which just got finished, can be used for federal funding related to wildfire mitigation.
So there's a number of different plans that trigger federal funding. The evacuation plans aren't them. Evacuation planning is actually really new. When we say we want to make sure we incorporate stuff that you want, one of the great things about this is there's no agency telling us what we have to have in these documents. We are trying to figure out how to make them useful, so we're actually crafting them with you and designing this based on what the communities tell us they need. So, because there's nobody saying we have to do anything, we're trying to figure out how to make this useful and what kind of document does that mean. So, yeah. So there's not necessarily money, but there's a lot of flexibility and hopefully a lot of usefulness. Yeah. Anybody else? Question?
Okay, we'll have more time for questions later, so totally okay. This next part is plan boundaries. And we had a little bit of discussion in the steering committee about these plan boundaries. What we've gone with thus far is the city limits. So that way we are able to ensure that the focus remains on Depoe Bay and doesn't get really broad with the other little coves nearby. So we're very specific on that scope. However, we want to ensure that in case there's something, a hazard or an asset right outside that plan boundary, that we're able to include that and kind of wrap that into that plan. So you can think about that. We will be able to bring that into the next discussion that we have on that plan boundary. And so once again, to wrap it back to our intended meeting outcome, we really want to collect information about Depoe Bay from you to make this plan as detailed and useful as possible. Because at the end of the day, this is your plan and this is, you're going to have to use it or get to use it. So that is our goal. Sweet, so this is where I was kind of thinking questions might come in. Do you have any at this point in time? Yay, okay, perfect, that means that I did my job, so thank you. Sweet, so our first, oh, that's kind of small.
It's really small.
That is kind of small. Can you guys see that okay, or I can just say the questions one at a time and then we can.
Did you want, maybe frame how you want them to discuss first, before you say the question? I don't know this to work.
Okay, I was thinking a group discussion altogether. Do people want to chat next to each other first, or do we just want to stick together?
Let's do whole group event and then
Okay.
stick on.
Yeah, perfect. So let's do this question by question, just because it's so small and I can barely see them. The first one is, what parts of the evacuation do you feel prepared for as a community or your organization? You can think for a moment.
It says you feel least prepared for it,
Oh.
but maybe it's both, what do you feel prepared for, what
No,
do
it
you not
is
feel
least-
prepared for?
I don't know if you can see, there's a
Yeah,
Zoom
I tried to
box
move that
on
darn
there.
thing.
So I appreciate that.
I can make them any smaller. There you go. Maybe
All right, let's do it
smaller.
one more time.
No?
The only two routes out of town are more dangerous than staying here.
So
So
north, south.
that's, in the event of a seismic event, this area of Depoe Bay is 2 bridges from the nearest grocery store,
Yes.
both of which will be gone, probably. So we need to figure out food, water, power to stay here.
Yes.
And that's kind of where we're aiming for. And we figured that people will gather, there'll be 2 Depoe Bays, there'll be Northwood Bridge and Southwood Bridge, and there'll be 2 ways to go. So we need to duplicate all that. And speaking of water, I know the water supply is on that utilities list.
Mm-hmm.
But that's actually higher priority than water treatment. So that's kind of where we're at. We can't get out of town without going on along the beach somewhere, which probably won't exist.
Yeah.
So Scott, you're thinking more along the lines of shelter in place than evacuation.
Do we really have an option?
Well, we might have to think about that because we don't want to shelter in place if we got a tsunami coming or something.
Well, it depends on
It
the
might be-
tsunami, but there's plenty of high ground around here that we can get to hurriedly. We just can't get, if it takes an hour to get in the Lincoln, or half hour to get to Lincoln City, and we get a tsunami coming,
Yes, no.
and that's on a good day.
Yeah, so every hazard's a little different, so tsunami, you have a different concept, you don't really want to get in a car, you just want to get to high ground and wait for 24 hours maybe.
Yeah.
Well, what would you think about a wildfire? Would you?
Wildfire might be a different condition, because it depends on the wind, because if it's coming at us, coming down the hill, like it was in Lahaina, we've got to get out of town, but the roads won't be an issue then, so evacuation is more of an option at that point, but in the case of something that's gonna affect infrastructure, evacuation is not even a consideration.
So how do we deal with evacuation when you have a lot of people on the roads, right?
So I'm up in View of the Bay. And so when we talk about disaster preparedness, we talk about sheltering in place. We use all of that, and that's kind of how we prepared as a community. However, every time we sit and work as a community, wildfire comes up, and it seems that that means we are all on the road, and that's actually why 3 of us are here. Because an evacuation plan seems critical, and every time we try to think of one, we don't. So that's why we're really excited that we're coming up with a plan if we need to leave. I think the community, our emergency preparedness committee, thinks about sheltering in place and how we would do that and how we would assets, and we look at our assets. But if it comes to wildfire, that means we need to leave. So that's, I know why we're
I
here.
think Ms. Councilor Beasley, you first. Did you have a question?
I did, and, when I heard about this meeting, I really didn't know what you were gonna be talking about. In my mind, I thought about something that was down the road from this, and it has to do with a catastrophic Cascadia event. We've been told through Ugami that it will be up to 3 years before utilities are restored at the Oregon coast. And what I think of is evacuation is in terms of moving the entire population eastward. Because if we don't have sewer, water, power, I mean, it's, in thinking in that context, I think of our emergency committee as setting us up for, until we can get out of here, almost, in the immediate afternoon. So have you given any thought to that? How do we get out of here if these bridges are down? And we need to move inland because everything has been destroyed here.
I'm under the impression that we might not even have this powerful enough. We might not have Highway 101.
Yeah, and then the entire coastline could actually drop by 3 feet, so everything's gonna be broken. So the harbor, the bay itself may actually be inaccessible too.
So my question is, are you giving thought to that, alternate routes that don't involve this highway?
I don't know that we're going to have the answers to that question, but I know those questions are being asked.
Can I make a comment? Our committee met with Chief Daniels a couple of times, who's the fire chief. He has the keys to get to Siletz, and he told us that we could possibly go that way, but what trees are going to be down, what rivers are going to be up. If we have a wildfire, that's fine if it's in a certain place moving the other way, but we do have limited options as to what to do.
Yeah, and I know that the Coast Guard and NOAA have been in a lot of communications regarding how you would do water exits for isolated populations after it had settled enough and where those places might be, and they're looking at the locations that they think would actually survive the drop based on the Cascadia event. And then of course, where helicopter locations would be, that's one of the things we do want to address. If there are locations for helicopter staging areas for both North and South Depoe Bay. All of those things might be critical.
Okay. And one of the challenges with this plan is that it is multi-hazard. So we talk about the big one a lot, but then we think about the ice storm and how much that impacted. At least I lived in Springfield and didn't have power for 7 days. So that greatly impacted my community, and I imagine it was a very similar experience here. And so I think it's, I think very broadly in the realm of what you're thinking, whether that's a wildfire or even a landslide taking out a part of a road or some flooding, it can be more minor than, mass scale tsunami.
As a matter of fact, more likely that you're gonna need it for small stuff than the big stuff. Hopefully, knock on wood, everybody fights in, that's what we want.
Did you have water in Springfield?
No. Well, we had a boil water notice, but.
Oh, but you had water coming through the taps?
Yes.
So it was a boil water notice.
Yeah.
So is the Navy part of our evac plan? I mean, when I think about fire coming over the hill, I think about going that direction, which is the water. So is that something we can incorporate into the plan? Is that?
We actually haven't talked to the Navy, we've been talking to the Coast Guard.
And then what do they say?
Well, I mean, they do have plans for some of those types of responses.
Do they?
So, yeah,
Do they
I
work,
haven't talked to the Navy personally.
do they work with our boat captains? I mean, because remember during the steering meeting, I said, you know, we're gonna go get on a boat if we can, you know, so.
The Navy is involved through the state. I've been to seminars last year and they have sites like at Agate Beach and up at Beverly Beach that they have identified as, but, you know, we're in the middle. How do we-
Timing is everything, yeah.
Right.
And that could even be like identifying who owns boats here. And like, how can you mobilize that group to be able to be available in the case of an evacuation? And that's the kind of like local community scale thing that like, you know, us coming from.
Phoenix pretty tapped into that community, would that be easy, would that be something to access, you think, Ian?
Yes, it would not be hard to access.
Right.
Mhm.
That's a great idea, yeah.
You mentioned that at least one of the communities has a cache. How many caches are there already pre-located right now?
We have 2 in Stonebridge, one belongs to the fire district, and one belongs to our HOA.
We have one here.
Okay,
City Hall, that room, we have 3, well, the other 2 are small, so
Yeah.
we have 2 batches, one for the fire, one for.
There's different communities like up in Lincoln Beach that also have them. Lincoln Fire, one fire station has one. We are currently looking for other areas that we can put caches in. There's several different areas that we're
We're
pursuing.
going after the resiliency grant to put one up on Stonebridge, They've graciously offered to have the city use some space, so we're gonna hopefully get the grant and make it, it's very close to the assembly point that Depoe set, so
Okay, that's
we
good.
just moved even closer and then they don't all go to his house.
So Joyce, I'm correct, the friendship committee is looking at just adding them the 1 a year up until we have 8. This will have a big wide hope that we would have 8 at some point, but we're just gonna go at them.
That includes the HOAs, right? Or is that-
And we're also talking to Worldmark, which is a great concern as far as where's the population would go if there's a issue. So we're talking to their director of emergency and safety, trying to get him on board with what can he do, what can he do with his corporate office to help with this particular project.
He was invited tonight, if you guys want his name and email, I can definitely come back.
Because when you think about our population, you have to also consider we have a large non-resident population.
Yes.
So that's one group.
And I would say that your non-resident population at times can be higher than your resident.
Yes, exactly right. So just be, and
Back to those caches, did you say that those were located in tandem at the assembly points for the tsunami evacuation?
Not yet.
Not yet.
If we get the grant and we get to put one out in Stonebridge, it's a hop, skip and a jump and, you know, it's a better assembly point than where Dogami says we should go, and it's only because it's a higher location.
Right, because of the
This is a really good place to be, so.
And what we're working on as well is we're trying to determine something called islands. You have an island that's gonna protect each other. That's kind of a crude list there. We're working on it, is to try to determine how these islands are going to be, and try to talk to the population to be self-supplied first, and then within the island, trying to determine who has certain skills, certain equipment that's available to the islands.
Fantastic, very
And
nice.
how is that happening?
How is that happening?
Yeah, like who is working on that, or like what's
Well,
the scale of it?
Yeah, our team is right now. We're having an emergency preparedness meeting
Okay.
with Samantha on June the 8th, and that's going to be brought up to the general public. To say this is what we're looking at. We're gonna ask for names and addresses and phone numbers to get people interested in, hopefully, in the idea of being, you're on an island, you live here, so you're part of this island. And, just to help each other.
Right.
And I believe that you're doing that currently, aren't you, Deb?
yeah.
Very similar, and you are too, Karen.
Right, and so you have 3 of the HOAs here today.
And each one of the HOAs is one of the islands.
Right, and HOA, and when, so that's 3 different, directionally 3 different areas. So then then we expand to Worldmark, which is up then we talk about over here by the harbor. And so we've kind of looked at, using Dugami and looking at how how the city, you have a map of the city, how the city will actually look possibly after an event, we don't really know, but we can only go by what the geologic gives us so far. And so we kind of have an idea of where those would be, and then we would cache those, and then hopefully some of those will survive whatever the event is.
Do you have a map of those islands?
I can.
Yes.
Well, and I remember when, at the steering committee, I think I gave you guys some paperwork, and one of them was, it's an older map of the islands, but the island's very close to the same.
Yes.
So, because we could actually take that and make it a layer and have it in your plan.
That'd be great.
That'd be nice.
And then we can identify what resources exist for those islands if you have that information. And then like, do you have a water source per island? Is there what kind of public restrooms or sewer systems there might be? You know, all those things.
So as we were talking, so Paul was at the last meeting when we were talking about the islands, and then he saw the map very differently than those of us who were staring at it all the time, trying to come up and keep with eight. Then he immediately saw it as quadrants. And so he helped us to focus it originally, because this is obviously an evolving process. Originally working as quadrants and then working into the eight. And then Paul helped us see how that would be, and that actually gave us our focus on where our first four will be.
So I think we're gonna have.
You can take that
Way
down.
to describe that, Paul?
I was just
Yeah.
saying, this is kind of where we're, this is just the urban renewal map, but he doesn't want us to have. But Paul, you were just envisioning it, splitting it down, and I don't know where you thought the dividing line was.
Probably Collins.
Collins Street, basically.
Yeah, the bridge.
So you're saying the bridge north and the bridge south?
Pretty
has to be
much,
the
that makes
bridge.
sense.
And they're trying, the idea of emergency preparedness committee is to get caches north and south, so people are protected in each location when that bridge goes down.
And Collins isn't a barrier, the bridge is.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And it makes more sense to me to do it based on infrastructure, likely infrastructure failure points. And then what is islanded based on that, rather than just quadrating it off per se.
Well, we're looking actually to do both, have the quadrant and then islands possibly within the quadrant. Because we don't know how it's going to look, we just wanna be prepared for, whatever we can. I think quadrant might be too large in some areas for people to get to.
Yes.
So when you're thinking, if I might, when you're thinking the likely infrastructure failure points, are you thinking that the city would need to be able to provide water or, like running from our wastewater, our water plant, things like that, or the caches have the water in it? Are you thinking ways of this?
So you can look at it a couple of different ways. I mean, you could say, well, for long term, if we're 2 weeks plus, can we get a water tank, a drinking water tank has potable water in each one of those key locations? Or if you have 4 islands that are close together within one quadrant, could each quadrant have its own water source, drinking water source?
We've just purchased, life straws, community life straws, so that's what we had in mind for the water.
And that's certainly a good mechanism for small scale stuff, but the problem with life straws, if you've ever used them, it's great for actually drinking, but it's really challenging to use it to get enough potable water to
This is a
cook.
large, community life straw, it's made by.
They make big ones now,
It makes
and he
1,000
found them and
Oh, cool.
picked it
It
up.
makes
and
up
brought
to
them. They're really
5,000
pretty
gallons
cool.
a day.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then, having one of those in each cache.
One
Yeah.
thing, yeah.
Absolutely.
I think we have now. We have
That's true.
Three.
But it could, it can also be, something like the ice storm where there's no power,
Right.
but, there's no lack of water per se, but maybe there's no power to get the water to your house. So we
Yes.
stopped at the water treatment plant today and they said they had a generator that would run for 24 hours. Wastewater, sorry.
No,
So,
It'll run longer than that.
this is just what,
You guys snuck over our plane.
We did. That's what the guy said.
You were there.
Our staff told us that.
That's on our emergency recovery list, is that the wastewater, that's why we're looking at what we're doing with energy resilience. One question I have that pertaining to all this, we have talked about fuel.
yeah, that's a
So-
big,
I mean, that's, throw it out there, this is north and south, we don't have any fuel. So what would we do for that?
And you have a gas station on the north and the south side, and the north side Chevron is still open. Even though Google Maps says it's closed, is that correct? Okay, yeah, perfect.
But yeah, what's our quantities of fuel for a 2-week supply, is that enough to keep us sustained?
Does the city actually have any fuel storage?
Yeah.
Air Harbor. And we were also talking, one of the things that we learned from the power outage was how they get the fuel going. You can get it going from place to place.
Right.
By down cans, they gotta go there, so we are actually going to get
We couldn't get
One of
down
those
the tanks either.
things to put in the back of a truck.
Yeah.
So that we can load it up with fuel and then go
You
around
can use
and
a
help
Spire
people.
grant to buy those.
But we keep 6,000
Yes.
gallons.
But in
Yeah.
the tsunami.
Oh, I'm throwing
that-
everything in the
It's
resiliency
underwater.
grant.
Well, the resiliency grant is a difference. The Spire grant is actually a much easier grant to get,
The Spire grant is?
particularly for fuel storage, tanks and trucks. Yeah, it's a much easier grant to get.
Okay.
So what would you
Including
suggest
your
is
fuel,
fuel?
look at hydrogen as a potential fuel.
What kind of fuel would you look
Yeah.
at?
Well, we're researching hydrogen right now, but for the folks that really need the diesel and the gas.
I would,
Diesel, gas.
What would you
what your
think?
options would be that you could be able to work with propane, diesel and gas, and then so that you can use whatever is actually available would be the best idea. That you have a generator that can shift between those different types of fuel sources, so that
Where
we might
would
have
we put
options.
it? Would it be best up above somewhere, so we can all have access to that? I mean,
As far as
Yes.
fuel tank, you would want it in some place that's outside of your tsunami zone, so that's gonna be your first part. And then look at your other hazard layers and make sure that you're not putting it in a landslide hazard area or a key wildfire area.
and
And
how
then
do
make
we
sure
take-
it has at least two roads to it, so that if one road goes down, you can get continued access to it. So you would probably want to look really within those hazard layers that we're gonna provide you and try to verify, and try to find a location that is least likely to get impacted.
So like a plateau, so.
Yeah, I mean, so that's always gonna be challenging in this area because you don't have a lot of flat land anywhere. And everything has a little bit of challenge, so where's the easiest kind of fun to market, to find someplace? But there are lots of different, one of the things that we can help is identify other grant opportunities as well for various different types of projects.
Just never thought about the Spire one to that, so I'll look at.
Can I hear more about the bunker, the city bunker?
It's fuel.
Fuel, oh, it's just
It's
fuel.
It's in a fuel bunker.
Oh,
Oh, it's
Well,
down the
referred
harbor,
to when
right, we
when
call it a
built
bunker, but
oh,
it's,
okay.
how many gallons does that thing hold?
6,000 gallons of diesel, and then 2,000 gallons of gasoline.
How many gallons of gasoline?
2,000.
Two.
And, yeah, and it's in a concrete, 10-inch concrete walls, floor, ceiling.
But it's down the harbor, so if the harbor doesn't exist,
Yeah.
the fuel doesn't exist.
Yeah, but it's in a pretty solid building. But
It was very handy
Nothing.
because people, they ran out of gas, they couldn't sell gas, so. it was
Like
handy.
the gas stations did?
Yeah. Isn't that right, everybody? Didn't they run out of gas? I heard that they ran out of gas.
their power was
Their power was
out,
out,
because their gasoline's
So there was
around, they
nothing
would
they
have
could
to
do
pump
about
it
it,
out.
that's right.
So they don't have
Out at
generators.
the gas station.
We found out a lot of people we thought would have generators don't.
Yeah,
and they're-
it's actually really rare that gas stations have generators. However, it's also equally rare that gas stations have the connections to attach a generator. So even if you had a generator, most gas stations don't have the connections. However, the connections are not incredibly expensive. That can also be a Spire grant. You can actually get the connection equipment put for both of your gas stations and then just bring them a generator. That's something that that a lot of communities have suddenly been thinking of. It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah, it was the same thing with Chester's, the grocery store down there. They didn't have a generator, so they lost a lot of stuff out of that, which that was also, to me, really odd that they didn't have one. But, you know, people, maybe he's gonna get one now.
I have a question for our
Yeah.
committee chair, Councilor King. And we have been using, or I've seen two different emergency plans for Depoe Bay. Are we working on a new emergency plan? We are, as us, or have we hired a consultant?
We haven't hired a consultant, Kim, I think you'd be better to address that.
Right, we're working, I'm going through some training put together by or emergency management on assembling a coop. So
Right.
we already have one, we have a very rough draft of one that I'm not sure actually ever got implemented. We also have this massive emergency operations plan that was done during a time when everybody got the same plan. And it's very, I mean, it's very,
Outdated.
well, it's not only outdated, but it's very,
Onerous.
thank you. It's a
Incredibly
huge plan and there's a lot of moving parts in it that it'll take us forever to figure out how to do some of these things versus actually react. So we need something a little more tailored to just what we would do, not what everybody in the county would do. Because these were like boilerplate plans that were put together, and I've done some research. All places in Oregon, so many cities have the same plans, just names changed to. So, but we are working on it, we're getting the background on it, we're getting, this is one thing that will really help us inform what that looks like, things like that, so. We do need to really sit down even as a council, and we talked about doing work sessions on it to really form out our hierarchies and things like that, so, still work in progress.
That back row has been kind of quiet, just wanted to see if anybody had anything they wanted to add.
Jack?
Putting you on the spot.
All right, they're doing okay.
Okay. I warned them about you. Well, the reason I wanted Jack here, because he's been involved with emergency planning with the city, he was on that committee. A lot of the stuff we have was informed by what they did.
So that I heard that some of your HOAs have your own evacuation plans. What do those look like? And
Well, that's, and it's, so the one, View of the Bay, we'll speak for View of the Bay. So View of the Bay, so when you came, so Collins, you go up Collins and you're here with the treatment plant. If you head up Spring, that's the subdivision, the development of it, and then that's View of the Bay. And so, we sistered with Stonebridge, which is down Collins and up and over. And so we talk about either getting to them and up and out, because they've got property behind, they've got a logging roads up behind them. The evacuation area is at the top of Collins, so we thought, well, do we head out that way? Again, it is the weakest part of our Aware and Prepare Committee, which is why 3 of us are here, because it said it was about evacuation, because that is something we really, I know it's what our neighbors ask us about every time we meet. So what are you guys thinking about evacuation?
yeah, because we drove up there and actually parked next to your evacuation area. And it's like, there's nothing here.
No, there's nothing.
What would you do once you got here?
Well, I think the point is to get out of harm's way. I think the point of that, access area is strictly to get out of harm's way. When you've got people, there's so many people that you identified aren't residents, it gives people a place to go to get out of harm's way, and then from there.
And then from there now what?
And then from there, right.
John?
Yeah, one of the things that, Collins is used quite frequently is, okay, we'll go up Collins. It may not be possible to go up Collins, because there's a very low point there that's fed in by the bay, and, if there's a tsunami, you could well have water in there, so, I mean, Collins is fine, providing you can get there.
Yeah, I saw that dip and we were like, and here's your hazard right here.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a dam upstream from there too.
That's where that's where our reservoir is, am I right?
I don't know your name, but you had your hand up.
Yeah. Ann Bradley speaking, a safety chair for Little Well Cove, which is a community of approximately 250 homes just a mile south of Depoe Bay. A lot of them though are part-time residents, so we're not coming from a real position of strength, but there is a lot of interest among us. And we have, we talk a lot about individual resiliency, and we talk about food and water sources, and we have recently learned from Brady, who's going to do a presentation for us in May about water and access to water, that there are wells on our property, and that there would be a way of getting potable water if a generator were available. So all those kinds of things are of great interest. In terms of evacuation, we've gotten extraction points, but then it's like, so who's coming for us? So we're very interested, Joyce, in becoming part of your network.
Do the different quadrants or HOAs have generators at all? Or do you know people who would have generators? Do you have a list of like different homes that have generators?
There's several in view of the bay that do have them now because of what happened in January. Myself included in carrying the response on that. But what we are thinking, if there's something major and the tsunami comes in, we will not have access to come down to the coast, and the coast people will not have access to get up to us. So what we are working on presently is to take care of everybody that is up there for a period of at least 2 weeks until we can get some help in. We have worked into the radio systems to where we can communicate into other areas to get help to be brought in as we need it.
What kind of radios are you using?
Midland for right now, and we also have the
GMRS.
GMRS.
I don't remember what they are,
Thanks,
but
Brady.
sorry, I don't remember what kind, Valfung. Yeah, I almost said the wrong words. We also have some Valfung systems, so yeah, right. We have a phone tree up there, so we are able to then communicate with everybody within minutes, using the radio system.
Have you guys done any exercises with this radio system,
Every month.
Yeah, we have a monthly.
You exercise every month?
Well,
Well, we were doing
the
it every Saturday for a while.
emergency preparedness committee was doing that with our emergency operations
There were a
folks.
few people that Saturday that run it.
And then Little Whale Cove has a phenomenal communication system, actually.
What do you have?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's very rudimentary and it works effectively. I don't know how phenomenal it
This
is.
works with not only GMRS, it also works with ham.
It
They
does.
have a ham radio and that.
Yeah, they have, yeah.
We have a series of, it's called
Yeah.
an internal communication system. And our whole neighborhood of this 250 homes is broken down into 15 safety areas, each of which has a safety captain. And those safety captains, once a month, the first Saturday of the month, we all call in for radio checks. So we know that we can either get directly from the farthermost points or that a message can be relayed by a safety captain. And that's just, and then we are encouraging residents very much as part of their own resiliency to have their own family radio system, which is usually a Midland or a Boston.
They during the outage, they put out messages every 2 hours. It was the only thing, only information that we had that first day. And it was coming out of them giving out information every 2 hours out of Little Whale Cove.
Wow, what kind of information were you putting out?
We're providing what the update was from Central Lincoln PUD because they weren't posting except on social media. And so, and we didn't have internet, and so it was real spicy, and so they were putting that information. Do you remember else? There were 3 things. So every 2 hours, they would put out a regular report. They would put out the NOAA report, they would put out the Central Lincoln PUD.
And then just observational, anecdotal information, if somebody was able to get to Lincoln City, they would say, oh, there's fuel here,
And
there's not fuel there.
reports.
Same thing with
Every 2 hours, reports.
So yes, I didn't consider it to be exceptional, but I'm glad.
Yeah,
It is very helpful.
That's very cool.
Yeah, that sounds pretty phenomenal.
I think, let's go to the mayor, and then I saw that we had a hand over here, so sorry to.
We also in our storage barn here have a trailer that's set up to communicate worldwide. So it's ham operators, Michael Dane is our key person, and we've got, I think 4 or 5 other fellows that are trained, ready, and they work with Samantha as well through emergency response.
Yeah, they were part of that communication.
Okay.
That was good.
Right. Yeah. So we are prepared to communicate. I'm getting a satellite phone for Christmas, so.
Yeah, it's set up to travel to, anywhere we need to take it, it's set up.
Oh, and so it's mobile.
Yeah.
So there's a setup for radio in these like communities, in the HOAs that you guys just spoke of, and here. Okay, are there any other places for communication that?
You've seen the city, right?
Yes.
We could do
I know, it's
something.
small.
Yeah, there's several ham radio operators in Lincoln County and in our immediate areas that are part of the same
The whole
group.
communication.
I would
Is there
think
someone
there's
in the
HOAs that would have it that we're not aware of,
I
like,
think that's kind of what I,
like Lincoln Beach.
Or does like Worldmark, how do you communicate with those people? How do they communicate with their own people?
They're getting GMRS. We've had one of their reps from Worldwide.
So Brady, what's the repeater conversation that I've heard Michael Day have?
So yeah, it was probably in the budget too. If we had a repeater, it's easier to communicate with the GMRS that bounces the signal to like Newport or Lincoln City, rather than direct.
We don't have that yet,
No,
but that's something that we.
it's something we're trying to get. Yeah.
Would
Through grants.
it be located here?
We put it up on our tower.
You want everybody to be able to talk in the park?
Well, no, it's just a certain frequency that our radio communications would use.
I mean, the hub and spoke design might work better in that situation where you have, the radios are out in the public and we can talk to each other, we can talk to a central location or two or maybe 8. And they have communication facilities to get out of town.
Right.
And that's probably good enough, because we don't want everybody talking out of town.
Yeah, it's, I'm not familiar with what the radio guys do exactly, but they do exercise the unit quite often, about once a month.
But part of that
And
session
they-
is figuring out
With Lincoln County.
when you mobilize them, because we didn't mobilize the emergency operations center, or we just, for the power outage. So how else, if we don't do that, how else do we communicate?
Well, so what are your triggers then? If you didn't mobilize an EOC for that event and you were out of power for multiple days, what would be an event that would get big enough that you would?
Well, that's one of the things that we need to talk about as a council, like when there are certain things in there, and it's essentially whenever we feel like we need to mobilize. But
So
that's what the plan says, but the
That's what
plan
the plan
doesn't
says.
say mobilize if you're out for hour for 3 days. No, it doesn't
The
say
problem
that.
is if you don't mobilize, then you can't apply for FEMA funding later. So, personally, coming from a very small town as well, we actually basically convinced our city council to declare alert immediately. So Cottage Grove declared the very first day of a 6-day blackout. But we didn't wait to see if it was gonna be bad, we just declared. Because you can always undeclare, but if you haven't declared, you can't gain any money. And we're applying for $1.5 million in refunds for what we did do, so. So my recommendation would be spool up at least do a city council declaration, even if you don't really run a full EOC. So that if it does come down to it, you can eventually try to get some of your funding back.
And we did declare, but not immediately.
Right.
Declare, because,
We didn't think it was gonna last.
well,
Well, but when you declare, then you start actually keeping track of how much staff time that you're running, and then you can start actually getting refunds for that staff time.
No, we're
So when you're
also,
writing it again, just
we're
encourage.
also considering, I'm thinking Starlink, we've talked about it. I don't know if that's,
is that the satellite phone?
yes.
Yes, I just realized I didn't put that in the budget, so, but
Okay.
that would be something emergency preparedness committee folks would need to
Okay, so thank you.
come out of their budget.
I'm not sure.
Did
But I
we,
have no idea how much one of those are.
did we move on past your point, council member? Sorry, you had your hand up a long time ago.
Well, I just wanted to know if this plan was gonna have something about warning notice, our sirens aren't working.
Oh,
Yeah,
your
so-
sirens, talk about that.
We'll talk about that.
They don't have
We don't
We don't have sirens.
Did you have them and they're not working, or is that?
We're removing,
We're removing them.
just like the other cities.
We wanna go to more of the radio, the satellite phone communications. Beef up that versus sirens, because part of the problem is there was how many sirens and there was only 2
5.
towers that are working.
We had 5 and no one could hear them, and there's a lot of liability. The county didn't want to have anything to do with our sirens because of the liability.
So my question is, will you make a recommendation?
We could. So your current system would be to use like Everbridge or Lincoln Alerts?
We are getting signed up with Everbridge, absolutely.
You haven't been signed up yet.
We're on it, but Sam and I are learning together.
I
I'm the guinea pig.
Okay.
She decided, because Jenny set that up a long time ago, but nobody really had time to dive into it. Some of the cities are doing a little bit more with it, but we all have something set up. We're set up.
But you
And
don't use it.
So you're
Not yet.
set up as a city to send out
right,
notifications.
with our keyword Depoe
Okay.
Bay. Depoe Bay, yeah. So it's pretty sure it's just Depoe, it's like pound Depoe Bay. But that's part of the stuff, once we get, I've been working with Sam on it, once we get that settled and gone, we'll use that as a primary means.
So then you can have
communication.
each one of these islands actually have their own
That's
little
exactly
sub things too.
Well, she's being very stingy with keywords,
Well, yeah.
because she's trying to protect the messaging and
Yeah.
making sure that, you know, the right things get out, but we can start on that. Cause we talked about like putting a sign up that says, you know, welcome to Depoe Bay, we're glad you're here, to keep updated on emergencies. You can opt into this keyword, while you, like a tourist could opt into this keyword while they're here, and then when they leave, they could either opt out. We already have like 68 people have opted into the Depoe Bay keyword that we didn't know until recently we actually had.
Yeah, we did get that the Lincoln alerts were opt-in instead of opt-out,
Right.
so that was a big issue, that's actually.
I have a question. We're talking about Starlink, but we don't really know how effective that's gonna be from us. And I'm wondering if there's anyone in the audience that has experience with Starlink or other satellite situations that can give their spiel on that, if it's helpful or not.
There's definitely a lot of fire departments in Lincoln County that are using it.
I know.
They're not, I actually asked a second ago, and so they don't know anything about Starlink, they said it was something they were gonna be looking
depends.
into.
So
Yeah.
that was actually,
Yeah, I just talked about it.
yeah, that was Select, just transferred to Starlink after the Otis fire. That was their response.
I think Frank has a question.
Yeah, I was not aware that we're taking away our towers, I might have missed something. But, to me, having a tower by, like WorldMark, you know, emergency signal, it's a hell of a lot better than having people see a little sign as they come into a sound, please opt in, you know, or even in their rooms. So I would like to have a better discussion at city council, you know, liability or no liability, it's like, you know, people are gonna die if they're not willing to move.
Brady, would you look interested in that?
Well, they're using these radios that you could plug in with battery backup that do the same thing as our radio. Our siren system is set up where you literally have to get up in the middle of the night and come to City Hall and set it off. It's basically a communication system for a campus that was put in. It's not anything like Hawaii has or anything like that.
Well, the lights didn't go off either.
Yeah.
Yeah, cause it.
They were worried that if they set it off, people would run to the hills where the fire were, so they opted not to, but, yeah. But, the radios have fire warning, high wind warnings, tsunami alerts, tsunami warnings.
But who
And
has the radios?
it's put out by, you can buy them on Amazon.
Well, it's a lot of that education that we need to be doing as an emergency preparedness and as a city, which we kind of are doing. In fact, we've been given, that at your emergency resilience, we gave away some radios. So we're kind of making these available as we can. Obviously, we can't supply the entire city, but there's a lot of training about what we're going to do for that and which radios and things like that. You know, probably more during the June 8th event with Sam here.
So you've been trying to give them out, have you, are you, as part of your education, just also developing a flyer for people to buy them if they're on their own, if they just
We
want to
haven't
pay
done
Amazon?
that yet, but that's probably not a bad idea for the June 8th event, is to put the flyer.
Yeah.
To say,
This is what we're
we've got
using,
the
buy one.
information, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, make them available. I would like to see us do something better training, actually have better training on how to use these radios.
Do you guys do a citywide exercise for tsunami? Have you ever done like a race to the top or anything like that?
No, we've done some internal for the Oregon shakeouts is all, but we have not done a citywide. And that is one of the top of the things that we've talked about in our emergency preparedness is doing a citywide.
And it would be nice to do it, but we're not ready to do it yet.
No, because we don't know where to go.
One of the
You're
things
gonna help
you
us
could
with
talk
that.
about, when we talk about the siren, for example, you set that siren off, no one knows what to do. Which way to go? You're gonna say what the if you have a radio and you encourage people, like in Little Wolf Coast, our group, we've got a good strong group that's really proactive. They encourage everyone to purchase a radio. And that's one of the forefronts of moving in there. That's one of your debrief, you explain to people how important that is for your communication link, because that's the only thing you're gonna have, supposedly. So We encourage, generation when possible, power generation, adaptation of storage of water. We also, sewage facilities, pets, your garage doors won't open, your cash won't work, your cash cards and banking doesn't work. You have to include all that in part of this because that's things that they, medications, all the special devices people have, all that and above, and you have to identify each one of those. And it comes from the individual, because the individual has to be prepared. That's where it starts.
I'm thinking that if Little Hill Code does this for all new citizens moving in, possibly we could do that as a city council, or city
Well, remember,
office.
they put together a packet, this committee that I keep talking about, is they put together a packet that they gave to all new residents that told them this information. Where to go, show them where the assembly reports are. I think that would be a great idea to have that redeveloped and given to new residents.
Do we have a copy of it?
Yes, I don't think I gave it to you, but I don't know. Did you ask if you had a copy of it?
I said if we had one. If we don't, can we get one?
I will get you one, because I'm not sure if I gave you one.
That's a great idea.
I'm wondering, does anyone know if, it sounds like you have 2 cell towers that serve Depoe Bay. You have the Otter Rock one and then maybe the Lincoln City cell tower. Is that?
Fire department has.
Oh, and the fire department.
But the fire department has an entire cluster on top of the fire department.
Okay, perfect. And they have generators at the fire department. So the cellular communications would probably remain.
They did not, yes.
They did not.
And then,
Verizon did,
travel
AT&T
launch.
did not. AT&T doesn't have a, generator. AT&T doesn't have a generator at
Cottage,
their tower.
Cottage Grove as well, they did not have AT&T
Right.
went downstream.
And
yeah.
so we had to wait for them to get one in, that's why we went down.
Verizon still works.
Verizon has one, and they have, there isn't a plan to.
And
put one
Verizon
in.
worked for us
So
until their generator went dry. And then-
Oh.
And then there you go, right.
So AT&T doesn't have a plan to put a generator in.
No, I actually was using his leverage to change my plan, but they,
The
they
travel
didn't
launch.
bite.
Good try. Okay, that's really good to know.
It's all the generators.
Wow, never you know that. I really need to change my plan.
Yeah, no, it's right.
And-
Yeah, Verizon's what it is.
So we want to recognize that we only
And I
have
really want to.
20 minutes now, guys. We want to make sure that we actually try to capture as much information as possible and to tell you what our next steps are. Do you want to actually try to put some stuff up there?
Yeah.
We literally give you pens and you can write.
Almost of the
Or if it's stuff that, if you think that we're missing things, that would be fabulous. We could also do that on your way out. We could continue this conversation until, for another 10 minutes and then wrap up. And then as you walk out, you can add stuff. That works?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think one question we haven't really touched on is, are there people, like all of you are here because you're aware of this and you're trying to be prepared. So who's not prepared? And specifically, who's gonna have the most challenges in your community in the case of an evacuation or a shelter in place situation?
Our tourists.
Or.
Well, and the older folks, but we're gonna have, if we do this during tourist season, we're gonna have a problem. Because we don't know that the hotels and things, and they're doing their job to make sure that people know where to go. All the short-term rentals, all vacation rentals, we don't know what they're telling folks, if anything. So if I was staying, over there, where would I go?
And most of our short-term rentals are right on the water.
Right on the water.
Do you think you're gonna have bigger problems with the hotels or with the short-term rentals?
Short-term rentals, because they're right on the coastline, the hotels are across the street.
No, but they're right in the water too. Worldmark.
Yeah.
Worldmark, yeah, that's
Worldmark
huge.
is- Yeah, that's
And-
short-term rental, it's not a hotel, is it? It's a short-term rental.
It's a timeshare,
It's a little different.
and they do have kitchens, but if they don't have power, so I would doubt that Worldmark has enough generation.
I have no idea what they did during the power outage. What did they do?
Most
I
of
went
them left.
north.
They sent
We
fire.
heard that most of them
Actually, they
left.
left.
They left,
I think
They
they
just
just
backed up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that, what, we don't know what they do in these places, in our truck, we don't know what they do travel on. What happens when their power goes out?
But if 101's blocked, they're not.
Yeah.
I know, that's, you're not gonna be able to.
Well, 101 is walking.
And-
Busy Saturday.
But if you stay like in a hotel in Seaside, There's a map inside your hotel.
Yeah.
It tells you exactly where to go.
You know, Seaside requires that, that's a city council.
It is
and
really,
that's a
I've
good idea.
actually had that brought up, and it's good to know that, because I actually have our city attorney, and he's supposed to be researching that, to find out if we can implement those.
And Newport
It's
does
an
that,
or- it's
actually, this is
important.
actually a number of cities that have started to require that.
Yeah, cause we don't have any
Don't
such
limit it to just hotel rooms.
No, it's gotta be, and that's short-term rental.
They have
Well,
devices.
And there clearly are, that's the big concern is our non-residents. Just because we organized up at View of the Bay, so we're 29 homes. And those of us that are very active are very active, and there's those of us that are not, and they're never going to be. And so when you say, what's your biggest concern? I also have to say that yes, you've got a lot of people right here that really care, and you kind of spread the word, and yada, yada. But I would say, half of the Depoe Bay residents really don't think like this. They do not live lifestyles of preparedness. And that doesn't concern me, I just know it's in it.
Well,
We
getting
know
the
that
right
up in our neighborhood, we know we're gonna cover their ass when it comes to it, and I believe that's kind of what we all think about, that we do too. When we talk about what we're preparing for, we're not preparing for those of us that have stuff in our garages, we're preparing for all the people that don't.
Yeah, right.
And also the expectation that it isn't the city that's going to rescue them.
That's
They have to start with themselves first. We would supplement anything and do the best we can. But she's right, getting people to prepare like they should. I am very guilty of that. I'm one of them. Do I have some things? Yeah. Do I have everything? No. And why? Because I don't think it's gonna happen.
You really don't?
In that sector. Or I'm an ostrich with my head in the sand.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we have a lot of.
Yeah, we also have a lot of people that don't have resources.
There's that. Can you say more about that?
Well, if you look at the economics of our county, our city, there's a lot of very, very poor people that spending money for a radio or extra supply, I mean, they can't even put food on the table.
I was gonna say, there's no way they're gonna buy a radio.
No, or any even small things.
So
However,
how might you consider being able to support those folks in some way, whether that's there's an organization or that to partner with, or like
That's
how
where
do you?
grant funding would have to come in to provide emergency kit to, every resident who wants one. And in the hotel rooms, you know how if you steal a bathrobe, you gotta pay for it. We could have an emergency kit provided, or have WorldMark emergency people and all the.
We talked to them about that,
Yeah,
exactly.
have a,
They would charge you
emergency
$500 to
supply for probably not 2 weeks, but 3 days or whatever, supply in their room. And if they take it, that's fine, they can take it, but they'll be charged for it, then they'll have one at home.
Oregon Emergency Management has the 2 weeks ready, they're running it right now. And so there was part of the unit was about that, which love us with the verbs, are taking the training. And it actually tries to take the heat out of it, like, okay, just do one extra can of food a week. I mean, it makes it, because of what you just asked, how are you gonna do it? I think it's all about education. But
Yes.
education and making it not so scary that you need a
Yes.
CERT green backpack to be ready.
I've read a book
You could
about that.
have, and then it doesn't have to be MREs, it can be 3 cans of beans and
Yeah.
start there.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of the thing, is to take some of the mysticism out of it and bring it down to.
Exactly.
That's right, and that's one thing I thought was
It's the way
really
we're gonna
good.
craft our message.
I thought it was a really good, the really positive part of that program, if you haven't done the. It's a
Oh,
good
do you
one.
know about that program? That is such an amazing program that I can't wait until we can roll it out.
I created an emergency preparedness fair and ran it for about 10 years.
I can't wait till we can start rolling it out.
We have someone in the back.
Yeah, some years ago, they did do an emergency evacuation practice out of Little Well Cove. They all got together, because one of the members of the committee I was on, ad hoc committee I was on, lived there. And you talk about, putting cans of beans and everything in there. A lady had a whole suitcase full of cans of stuff but no can opener. So you know, you can have all the food you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But little old ladies aren't walking around with it.
That's a problem.
Or the milk someplace.
Or some little old man.
Yeah, little ladies aren't compared.
Putting one in my purse.
I have a bottle opener, but I don't have a can.
What we're looking into as well is, I'm not sure if that's what you were referring to, Deb, but we're looking into the possibility of having something housed at the fire department. They've been very eager to help us work with this, and to have, I know there's grants that we'll get, where we can find kits and food, and people will say, I want, this is my checklist, and they build their own bucket type of thing. And so when they build their own bucket, then you're having them involved in what they think that their family's going to need. And it might be a can opener, it might be cans, it could be a lot of different things.
Right.
The city of Seaside did that, and it was really successful.
Yeah.
And so we're looking to possibly do something similar.
Oh, I just wanted to say, like, one of the things that I think would be helpful when you all leave and try to add some things to these papers in the back is partner organizations, and that doesn't necessarily mean a nonprofit, but it can be. But like, do you have a farmer's market or some sort of event in the summer? Like, what are those potential places or events or, you know, pseudo group organizations that could be helpful in promoting this education?
Like, do we have a church that does a any kind of
No,
food giveaway?
We have a food bank.
We don't know anything about that, so do we have a food bank? We can't write that on. Yeah.
They're down here in Collins.
So what, we may be looking at this a little bit differently. We're a town of less than 1,600 people. We might have 1,000 tourists if all of those rooms are full.
Right.
So if we plan on supporting 3,000 people for 2 days, we're done.
For 2 days.
For 2 days. That gives us time to figure out something. And so if we had the ability to feed that many people for that long, that will at least get us past the month. And that's not that hard to do. We're not talking 10 or 15,000 people. We're not talking warehouses of food. We're talking fees.
Yeah, and the real problem is going to be where do you locate that so you can get access to
Not
it
in one place,
depending on
that's for
what's
sure.
going on.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's what we're talking, you know.
Yeah,
But-
I love your island concept, it's really great.
Yeah, one other thing, the county emergency planning director, I don't know how many people before, mentioned the fact that in a serious emergency and everything, there are no rules on hunting or fishing or anything like that. It's become sustenance. So there is also, for those who are able to do it, who know how to gut and clean fish and animals, that option does exist.
Can you answer, that's great, and actually, that's something that we rarely think about putting in. I wanna, real fast, I wanna ask you a question about internet and web use in this community. Do you think that that is a good tool for education for this community, or is our paper products better? I mean, what is the best education?
I think it's a mix of both.
Mix of both.
I think
Because we
also
have two
social media.
Facebook groups that are pretty active, a lot of people are on that, but not everybody has Facebook.
Right.
Yeah, so we have to have a couple ways to do it. It can't just be social media, it has to be both.
So if you were putting up some sort of papers, like poster or something, where would that be that people would see it?
Post office.
The post office.
Right, and we also post at the bank, they have a place to, I post things down at the, Samaritans, the health place.
Is there a place on the south, the bridge that is?
City Hall.
City Hall here, that's about it.
Never asked if you put something there at the gas station, if it has a board, I don't know.
Our work was put up too.
Yeah,
And that's-
and a lot of times we will send things to the HOAs and they will put things up on their board. We can always do a mailing to utility customers, but you know, there's risk to that because a lot of the utility customers don't even live here, you know. They split their bills, so.
Yeah.
And you know, they get something from Depoe Bay and it probably doesn't really strike in their mind that it's something I have to do something with, so.
I think a good way would be to do like we did for 50th and do a blanket direct mail to every address in town.
Yes.
Yeah, we've done that before. We are having National Night Out this year. We did it the first year. So this is really, National Night is a good time for people to talk about emergency and be prepared.
It's a great excuse to party.
It is a great excuse to party.
What is National Night Out? I don't know.
Oh, it's a way to support and recognize the community relationships between your first responders, fires, deputies, Coast Guard.
It was
You know.
started by Neighborhood Watch
Yeah.
many years ago.
Yeah, it's been in but Depoe Bay has never done it. Our first one was last year and it was, I thought it was great. You know, it is an excuse to party, but people got together and they got to meet people who saved their lives when they needed to, so. Got to take tour of the boats.
And a lot of neighborhood people got together in their different neighborhoods and
Mm-hmm.
talking about things. So it was
This would be
really
a great opportunity. What day is that?
August
first, the first.
No, it's not August first, it's the
Wednesday.
first Tuesday in August. We're gonna change the council meeting, so it's the sixth.
And that's a national.
That's the name of the day, it's not gonna
And
say
different people, I mean, the Little Well Code folks could do their own national night out, their own thing, when they would do something different, but I'm getting a canine this year, by the way.
Well, we're going to you.
Nice.
We're going to your party.
Yeah, I asked to get a canine, so we're getting a dog this year.
What are the next steps, ladies?
Yeah, perfect. So,
She's gonna skip through.
let's see, go for it. Next steps. Basically, we may have another meeting on Zoom to come back to you all and talk about routes. Is that something, can I get a show of hands, who would be interested in attending that?
That's why I'm here, actually.
Okay, perfect. So everyone who is interested, we had a sign-in sheet. Please make sure you do sign that and put your email, because I will be sending that email out directly. Or this one, right here. So if you haven't come up and signed that at the end of the meeting, please put that and put your email. Guys, I cannot read things very well. Please write legibly. I had this issue when I was working at the city of Eugene. I couldn't figure out emails.
Yeah.
So that is the next step from what you will hear back from us.
And so what you'll be sending us is that map that you put up that was in our community, and it'll have 3 different kind of routes on it. It'll show us what the evac areas are. Perfect. 'Cause I know that
Yeah,
someone
and-
to share.
So Lake County, this area that map example was, obviously has very different hazards that you all.
Right.
We have been talking internally about that it won't be primary, secondary, tertiary evacuations. It'll be based on hazards.
Okay, good.
So because it's gonna have to be, your
Yeah,
hazards are gonna
yeah.
dictate how you evacuate. Cottage Grove Lake is very different.
So it'll come in a sense, it'll come in a document, it'll come.
Yeah, we're gonna, we will be writing a plan that will
Okay.
probably, I think the ones that we have written before were something between 20 and 30 pages. But there's an executive summary that's much shorter, that is hopefully gonna be something that can be shared with the public. We will be working with Kim to determine how much of the rest of the plan, if you wanna make it fully accessible or not. There is typically some information in there that you don't necessarily want to put out, like cell phone numbers for public works, that you may or may not actually even want in the plan, or if you wanna make it fully public, or you redact that, something, because there's some information you don't necessarily want to go fully out.
What's your timeframe?
This team will have the 3 priority plans that we're focusing on initially done by June.
By June.
By graduation.
Yes, for both of them. I'm not working on them, they're finishing on them.
I've been there, graduation date, that's the end of the project.
I can do some beginning information on our honors and participating. Who should I send that to?
Clarissa.
Oh,
You want me to
Clarissa.
write your email?
Yeah. I can also give you my card if anybody would like it. And I would, if you have more thoughts, please email them to us as well.
Okay.
We want to take all the information you have. I would say if any of the homeowners associations have documents that they already have, even sketches of plans, we'd love to have them and be able to incorporate at least the ideas that you're moving forward with, and we'll cherry pick the best ideas and try to put them all in there. So if you have things to share, please do.
So do you want us to go ahead and write it up on that?
Yeah. You have more parts that you wanna end our meeting?
That's it.
Sure. So thank you all for coming. Up on the screen here, we've got examples. We've got categories in the back. Public assets, open space, telecommunications, public utilities, and then a couple more, and we have examples of those things. So that's kind of the idea. Put anything up there that you're thinking about. We also have an anything else, so if your thing doesn't fit in the category, you're welcome to put on anything else.
Can I have pens?
Pens around.
You can get that. Oh, that's one of the private things.
Good. I was like,